The rain started just after dinner, a soft, apologetic tapping on the window panes. I was wiping down the counter, the rhythmic squeak of the cloth against the granite a familiar sound in the quiet of my home. My husband David was away on another business trip, another city, another hotel room that felt more like a home than our own master bedroom did these days. My son Liam was in his room, the faint, rhythmic clicking of his gaming controller a constant soundtrack to my evenings. It was a Tuesday, it was mundane, it was my life. And then the phone rang, and the mundane began to crack. It was Liam, his voice a little too loud, a little too forced with casualness. "Hey Mom, so, the weather is getting pretty bad. Noah's parents are stuck in the city until morning, and his power is already flickering over at his place. I was thinking, could he maybe just crash here tonight? We'll just play games, I swear, you won't even know we're here." Noah. The name landed in the quiet kitchen like a stone in a still pond, sending ripples through something deep inside me I tried very hard to ignore. Noah, Liam's best friend since they were in kindergarten. Noah, who was no longer the gangly little boy who used to track mud through my hallway. Noah, who at 18, had grown into a quiet, confident young man with eyes that seemed to see a little too much, a smile that was a little too knowing. He was the kind of handsome that wasn't aggressive, but settled, a comfortable warmth that drew you in. And I had drawn myself in, far too many times, in quiet, guilty moments. "Mom? You there?" I cleared my throat, trying to sound like a normal mother making a normal logistical decision. Yeah, honey. Of course, that's fine. It's nasty out. Tell him to come on over before it gets any worse." "Awesome. You're the best. We'll be quiet." The line went dead. I leaned against the counter, the damp cloth still in my hand. The tapping on the window grew louder, more insistent. A storm was coming. I could feel it in the air, a heavy electric tension that had nothing to do with the weather. I told myself it was just about being a good mom, about providing a safe place for my son's friend. But as I went to the linen closet to pull out fresh sheets and an extra blanket, my heart was beating a little too fast, a frantic, traitorous rhythm against my ribs. 20 minutes later, the doorbell rang. I took a deep breath, pasting on my welcome friend of my son smile, and opened the door, and there he was. Noah. He was soaked, his dark hair plastered to his forehead, a worn backpack slung over one shoulder. A drop of water clung to his lower lip, and for a completely insane moment, I had the urge to reach out and wipe it away.
"Hey, Mrs. D,"
he said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate right through me. "Thanks so much for letting me stay. Sorry for the trouble." "No trouble at all, Noah," I said, my voice sounding thin and reedy to my own ears. "Come on in, you're dripping all over the porch." He stepped inside, bringing the scent of rain and damp earth with him, a wild, clean smell that filled the sterile air of my entryway. He shrugged off his backpack, letting it fall to the floor with a soft thud. Liam came bounding down the stairs, all excited energy. "Dude, you made it! I was about to send out a search party." They did their complicated, elaborate handshake, a flurry of slaps and finger snaps, and then disappeared up the stairs to Liam's room. The house fell silent again, but it was a different kind of silence now. It was a charged silence, a waiting silence. I finished making up the bed in the guest room, the one that rarely saw any use. I smoothed the duvet, fluffed the pillows, my hands moving mechanically while my mind was anywhere but. I was thinking about the way Noah's t-shirt had clung to his shoulders, the defined muscles of his arms. I was thinking about the way his eyes had met mine, just for a second, a flicker of something unreadable before he'd looked away. I was thinking about how utterly, spectacularly wrong these thoughts were. I was a 42-year-old woman. He was my son's best friend, a child practically, but he didn't feel like a child, not when he looked at me. Downstairs, I put on a pot of tea, trying to anchor myself in a simple, domestic ritual. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows in their frames. The rain was no longer tapping. It was a relentless, driving assault. The lights flickered once, twice, and then with a soft sigh, the house was plunged into darkness. The hum of the refrigerator, the faint glow of the microwave clock, all gone. In the sudden, absolute blackness, the storm sounded 10 times closer, 10 times more violent. "Mom?" Liam's voice called from the top of the stairs. "The power's out." "I know, honey. Stay there, I'll find some candles." I fumbled in a kitchen drawer, my hands finding the cool, smooth wax of the emergency candles and a book of matches. My hands were shaking slightly as I struck a match, the sudden flare of light illuminating my face. I lit 3 candles, placing them on the kitchen island. Their warm, flickering light cast long, dancing shadows on the walls, making the familiar space feel strange, almost sacred. I heard footsteps on the stairs, and then both boys were in the kitchen doorway, silhouetted against the deeper darkness of the hall. "Whoa," Liam said. "It's really out." Noah was quiet. I could feel his presence more than I could see him, a solid, still form beside my son's restless energy. "Well, this is cozy," I said, my voice a little too bright. "I was just making tea. Who wants some?" "Sure," Liam said. "Noah?" "Yeah, thanks, Mrs. D." "That sounds good." I busied myself with mugs and the teapot, the small tasks a welcome distraction. The 3 of us sat around the island, the candlelight between us. The storm raged outside, but in here, there was a strange sort of peace. Liam, bored without his video games, started telling a story about something that happened at school, his voice filling the space. I listened, nodding in the right places, but my awareness was a split screen. Half of me was with my son. The other half was acutely, painfully aware of Noah sitting beside him. He wasn't looking at Liam. He was looking at me. In the flickering light, his face was all planes and shadows. He was listening to Liam, but his eyes, those dark, serious eyes, were fixed on my face. It wasn't a stare. It was an observation, a study, and it made my skin feel tight and hot. I felt exposed, as if he could see all the lonely, forgotten parts of me that I kept carefully hidden away, the parts that dreamed of more than just a clean house and a husband who remembered my birthday. After a few minutes, Liam's story wound down. He yawned dramatically. "Man, I'm actually kind of tired. I think I'm just going to go to bed. The storm is making me sleepy." "You sure, buddy?" I asked, a strange mix of relief and disappointment washing over me.
Yeah, night, Mom. Night, Noah."
He gave me a quick hug and then disappeared back up the stairs. And then it was just the 2 of us, me and Noah, sitting in the candlelit kitchen, while the world outside tore itself apart. The silence that fell was heavy, thick with unspoken things. I stared into my teacup, watching the steam rise and curl in the dim light. "He's a good kid," Noah said, his voice quiet, breaking the silence. "He is," I agreed, my voice barely a whisper. "He's a great kid." There was another pause. The only sounds were the wind, the rain, and the frantic beating of my own heart. "You seem tired," he said. I let out a short, humorless laugh. "I am. I guess that's what being a mom does to you." He shook his head slowly, his gaze unwavering. "No, I don't think that's it." My breath hitched. "What do you mean?" He leaned forward a little, his elbows on the counter, the candlelight catching the side of his face. "I mean, Liam talks about you. He says you're the best mom in the world. He talks about the way you make his favorite cookies and how you always know when he's had a bad day, even before he says anything. But when he says that, he's talking about his mom. He's not talking about you." I felt a lump form in my throat. "I don't understand." "I see you," he said, and the words were so simple, so direct, they hit me with the force of a physical blow. "I see the way you look out the window when you think no one is watching. I see the books you read, the ones with the worn-out covers. I heard you playing the piano the other day. That sad, beautiful song. You're not just Liam's mom. You're you. And it's like no one's seen you in a really long time." Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes and I was mortified. I blinked them back furiously. No one had ever said anything like that to me. Not David, not my friends, not even my own mother. It was as if this 18-year-old boy had reached into my soul and pulled out the one secret truth I had been carrying for years. I was invisible. "That's very observant of you, Noah," I finally managed to say, my voice thick. "I just notice things," he said softly. "You have this light in you, but it's dim, like it's hidden under a bushel or something." The biblical reference was so unexpected, so earnest, it made me let out a real laugh this time. A watery, shaky sound. "A bushel? Wow." He smiled, and in the candlelight it transformed his whole face. It wasn't a knowing smile, or a flirtatious one. It was a genuine, open smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Yeah, a bushel. My grandma used to say that. She'd say, 'Don't hide your light under a bushel.' It reminded me of you." I didn't know what to say. My entire system was in overload. The rational, responsible part of my brain was screaming at me. "This is inappropriate. This is dangerous. Send him to bed. Now." But another part, A part of me that had been starved for so long, I'd forgotten what it felt like to be full, was leaning in, desperate for more. "I haven't played the piano in years," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. "Not really." "You should," he said. "You're really good." The wind howled, and a particularly loud clap of thunder rattled the house, making the candle flames dance wildly. I flinched. "It's just a storm," he said, his voice soothing. "I know," I said, though I felt like I was talking about something else entirely. "It's just loud." "It can't last forever," he said. He stood up and walked over to the large sliding glass door that led to the backyard. He stood with his back to me, looking out into the black, rain-lashed night. "It's kind of beautiful, though, the way it just lets go. No holding back, just all this power and chaos." I watched him, watched the way the candlelight outlined his silhouette. He was right. It was beautiful and terrifying, just like the feeling that was currently unfurling in my chest. I found myself standing up, my body moving on its own volition. I walked over and stood beside him, not too close, but close enough to feel the warmth radiating from him. We stood there in silence for a long time, just watching the storm. The rain lashed against the glass. The trees in the yard thrashed like wild things. Every time lightning flashed, it illuminated the world in a stark, black and white. And for a split second, I could see our reflections in the glass, two figures, standing close together in a dark room, a universe of possibilities and consequences stretching out between us. "I used to love storms when I was a kid," I said, my voice quiet. "I used to sit by this very window and just watch them. I felt like they were putting on a show just for me." "What changed?" he asked, his voice just as quiet. I shrugged, a small, sad gesture. "I grew up, I guess. I started worrying about the roof leaking and the trees falling on the house, and whether the power would be out for too long. I stopped seeing the magic and started seeing the potential damage." He turned his head to look at me then, his face so close to mine in the darkness. "The magic is still there," he said. "You just have to choose to see it." His eyes were locked on mine, and in that moment, the storm outside, the house, my marriage, my son sleeping upstairs, it all faded away. There was only the space between us, charged and crackling with an energy that rivaled the lightning outside. I knew, with a certainty that terrified me, that he was going to kiss me. And I knew, with an even deeper, more profound certainty, that I was going to let him. It wasn't a sudden, passionate lunge. It was a slow, deliberate movement. He leaned in, giving me every opportunity to pull away, to say no, to remember who I was and who he was. But I didn't move. I couldn't. I was frozen, trapped in the gravity of his gaze. His hand came up to cup my cheek, his thumb gently stroking my skin. The touch was so tender, so reverent, it was almost my undoing. And then his lips were on mine. It was a soft, questioning kiss at first, a gentle exploration. His lips were warm and firm, and they tasted faintly of rain and tea. It wasn't the kiss of a boy. It was the kiss of a man who knew exactly what he was doing. A man who saw the woman in front of him, not the mother, not the wife. The kiss deepened, and I responded, a wave of something so powerful and long dormant crashing over me. It was a release. It was a surrender. It was the sound of every wall I had ever built around myself crumbling to dust. My hands found their way to his chest, feeling the steady, strong beat of his heart beneath my palms. His other arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me closer, eliminating the last bit of space between us. The world narrowed to this single, perfect, impossible moment. The storm raged outside, a chaotic symphony of wind and rain and thunder, but it was just background noise. The real storm was here, in this room, in this kiss. We were creating our own thunder, a quiet, internal roar that was deafening in its intensity. When we finally pulled apart, we were both breathing heavily. The candlelight flickered between us, casting our shadows on the wall. Two separate figures now merged into one. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw my own shock and wonder mirrored in his eyes. The reality of what we had just done crashed down on me, a cold, hard wave of guilt and panic. Oh God, what had I done? "Noah," I whispered, my voice trembling. We shouldn't have." He didn't say anything. He just looked at me, his expression unreadable. He slowly let go of my waist, and the sudden loss of his touch felt like a physical blow. He took a step back, putting a careful, deliberate distance between us. "You're right," he said, his voice low and rough. I'm sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. I'm sorry too, I said, the words feeling inadequate and hollow. This is a mistake. A huge mistake. He just nodded, his gaze dropping to the floor. The air was thick with awkwardness and regret. The magic was gone, replaced by a suffocating weight of consequences. The silence was no longer charged, it was just heavy. Awful. I should go to bed, he said, still not looking at me. Okay, I said, my voice small. The guest room is all made up for you. Thanks. He turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows of the hallway without a backward glance. I stood there by the window, alone, my body still humming from his touch, my mind a chaotic mess. I brought my fingers to my lips, as if I could still feel the ghost of his kiss there. The storm outside was starting to subside, the thunder now a distant grumble, the rain softening back to a gentle patter. But the storm inside me was just beginning to rage. I stayed there for a long time until the candles had burned down low, and the first hint of gray light began to seep into the sky. I thought about David, probably asleep in a hotel room hundreds of miles away, oblivious. I thought about Liam, sleeping soundly upstairs, his trust in me absolute. And I thought about Noah, in the room down the hall, a boy who had seen me and, in doing so, had shattered my world into a million pieces. I finally went to my own room, but I didn't sleep. I just lay in the dark, replaying the kiss over and over, the memory both intoxicating and agonizing. I had crossed a line I never, in my wildest, most miserable dreams, thought I would cross. There was no going back. The sun would rise, the house would wake up, and I would have to face the new world I had created in the eye of the storm. A world where I was no longer just invisible. I was a woman who had kissed her son's best friend. And as the first birds began to chirp outside the window, I had no idea how I was ever going to live with that. The morning came, quiet and bright, as if the storm had never happened. The sun streamed through the windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. The power was back on. The low hum of the refrigerator was a jarring return to normalcy. I felt like a fraud moving through my own house. I made coffee, the aroma filling the kitchen, a comforting scent that now felt like a lie. Every creak of the floorboards made me jump. Liam came down first, cheerful and hungry.
Morning, Mom.
Whoa, it's a mess out there. Some branches came down. He raided the fridge, completely oblivious to the seismic shift that had occurred in this very room just hours before. Is Noah up? I don't think so, I said, my voice tight. He's probably still tired. Just then Noah appeared in the doorway. He looked awful, pale, with dark circles under his eyes. He wouldn't look at me. His gaze was fixed on the floor, then on Liam, then on the countertop, anywhere but at me. Hey man, sleep okay? Liam asked. Yeah, fine, Noah mumbled. Just gonna grab some water. He moved around the kitchen with a stiff, awkward gait, a complete stranger to the confident, graceful boy I had known for years. The air between us was a thick, palpable thing, a third presence in the room that Liam, bless his oblivious heart, seemed completely unaware of. I busied myself with making toast, my hands trembling so badly I could barely spread the butter. The silence was excruciating. Every clink of a mug, every scrape of a knife on toast was amplified. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. I wanted to turn back time to the moment before the phone rang, before I said yes, before the lights went out. Finally, Noah spoke, his voice directed at Liam. I should probably get going. My parents are probably back by now. Oh yeah, okay, Liam said. I'll walk you out. They headed for the door, and I knew this was my last chance to say something, to fix it, I didn't even know what, but I had to do something. Noah, I called out, my voice cracking. He stopped, his back to me. He didn't turn around. Yeah? I opened my mouth, but no words came out. What could I say? It was a mistake. It was a mistake. It meant nothing and nothing and nothing. It meant everything. Everything. Please don't hate me. Please don't tell. All the words were a jumbled, useless mess in my head. Be careful, I finally whispered, the most pathetic, inadequate sentence in the history of the English language. He gave a short, sharp nod, and then he was gone. The front door clicked shut, and the silence that followed was the loudest sound I had ever heard. I stood there, staring at the closed door, my heart a shattered vessel in my chest. Liam came back into the kitchen, grabbing his backpack. All right, I'm off to school. See you later, Mom. He gave me a quick hug, the same kind of hug he'd given me 1,000 times, but this time it felt different. It felt like a judgment. I flinched. Have a good day, sweetie, I managed to say, and then I was alone, truly alone. The house was clean, the sun was shining, the world was going on exactly as it should. But I was ruined. I walked over to the guest room, the scene of the crime. The bed was neatly made, the extra blanket folded at the foot. It looked untouched, pristine, but I knew better. I could still feel the ghost of his touch, the echo of his words. ACU, he had seen me, and for one brief, shining, catastrophic moment, I had let myself be seen. I had stepped out from under the bushel and let my light shine, and in doing so, I had started a fire that threatened to burn my entire life to the ground. I didn't know what would happen next. Would he say something to Liam, to his parents? Would he look at me with disgust or with that same quiet understanding? Would he ever speak to me again? The uncertainty was a new kind of torment, a constant gnawing anxiety that coiled in my stomach. Days turned into a week. I saw Noah once, from a distance. He was getting into his car as I was pulling into the driveway. He saw me, and for a fraction of a second, our eyes met. His expression was a storm of emotions, confusion, regret, something that looked like pain. Then he looked away, got in his car, and drove off. I didn't see him again after that. Liam said he'd been busy, that they'd been texting less. The space between them, once so small, was widening, and I knew it was my fault. My life went on. David came home, his usual distracted self. He commented on the storm damage in the yard, asked about my week, kissed me on the cheek like I was a maiden aunt he was fond of. The chasm between us felt wider than ever. I used to think I was lonely in my marriage. Now I knew I had been living on a deserted island, and I had just been shown a glimpse of a mainland I could never, ever visit. The memory of that night, of that kiss, became a secret I carried. It was a heavy, sharp-edged thing, but it was also mine. It was the most alive I had felt in 20 years. It was the most terrible thing I had ever done. It was my thunder, a sound that continued to rumble through the quiet, sterile landscape of my life. A constant reminder that in the darkness, with the rain lashing down and the world falling apart, I had been seen. And for better or for worse, I would never be invisible again. The storm was over, but I was forever changed, standing in the wreckage, waiting for the next roll of thunder, and terrified, and more alive than I had ever been, to find out what came next.